So Eric told me almost like 2 months ago that he's going to give me the opportunity to speak tonight. So I wanted to make sure that my topic was not only something that I thought was important, but something that would relate to everyone else. And in order for that to happen, I feel it's always very important that we somehow link the presentations that people make. When I was at St. John's, there's this teacher who was George Stephanopoulos' father. And George Stephanopoulos spoke at our commencement. And he laid this idea in me from very early on, because he taught Eastern Orthodox religion, and I wrote a paper on Eastern Orthodox religion. And he said a lot of people get stuck going down the wrong path because they want to make a decision too early. Right from the start, they want to choose what topic they're doing, they want to get working on this paper, and they want to get going. And you get to a point where inevitably you may have made a wrong decision, but you've gone too far to turn back. You've invested 4 weeks on this paper. I'm not going to turn around and start over at this point. So for the past 2 months, essentially, I've been thinking about the topic I wanted to choose. And there's a couple of things obviously I took into consideration. One thing, which is somewhat recent, was Gary's presentation on harmony. I thought for me that was a very impactful presentation. I thought, because it related to me a lot. I'm someone that gets very easily frustrated when someone doesn't do things the way I think it should be done, and the way I think I have an efficient process down. And I also thought about my last presentation, where I spoke about the 3 key aspects of persuasion, and I really focused on the emotion part. And in talking to people about that presentation, emotional intelligence came up a lot. I hinted at it at certain points in that presentation, and it was a logical next step for my next presentation. So I started thinking about Empire. Is it a harmonious company? And emotionally, in terms of emotional intelligence, how harmonious is it? Obviously, we have a lot of characters in Empire, and everyone's a little bit different, but how does our emotional intelligence rank among all people? So the first person that came to mind was Mr. Rich Hoseen. And it's unfortunate he couldn't be here because I'd love to see his reaction as I speak about him. But for those who don't know Rich, Adam's a young version of Rich if you look at him. I mean, Rich is a cool guy. You look at Rich and you're like, this guy has a sharp suit on, he's got his double Windsor knot all the way up, his hair's slicked up. And everyone smiles because it's true. You see him, you're like, that's a cool guy. We go to play basketball, he's got the best equipment, he's matching shoes, match his shirt, I mean, just the way he is. But obviously something makes Rich cooler than just the way he dresses. And if you watch the way Rich talks to people, and when you talk to Rich, it's the way he engages you in that conversation. When you talk to Rich, you know he's listening. He squares his shoulders up to you, he squints his eyes, and you can tell he exudes this energy that he's genuinely listening to what you're saying. And he's genuinely excited for you, or sad for you, whatever the case is. And it's that emotion that he exudes, that reason why people are drawn to him. People want to talk to Rich because they know he's listening. And they know that, when you're really excited about something, you want to talk to someone that's going to be excited for you as well. You don't want to talk to someone and blow you off. So people are drawn to that. So that's my first of 3 examples. Remember that picture in your head of Rich, how he talks to you, and that feeling you have when you talk to Rich. So the second person is Dirk. Obviously, we all know Dirk commands attention in the way he stands. His facial expressions, his demeanor, he commands a room just by standing there. And Tono described Dirk as our fearless leader. Now, by definition, fearless means he doesn't feel that emotion. And all emotions kind of associate with that. Dirk's not scared, doesn't feel fear. All those things would go together. But I'm assuming, and Tono can correct me if I'm wrong, Tono got that impression from his business acumen. When you see Dirk in a meeting or at any sort of business function, he's the man in the room. He stands tall, his chest out, he's got his sharp suit on, he doesn't vary facially too much, and that's what's been very successful for him. But you can catch Dirk in moments where he's no longer that guy. And a couple months ago, if you would have went up to Dirk and asked him how his baby's doing, how his daughter's doing, our fearless leader went from this guy who commands attention to, for lack of a better word, like a puddle of emotions almost. His head starts moving and he would turn his body like this as he talked to you, which is not Dirk at all. When you talk to Dirk in a meeting, Dirk's standing there looking you right in the eye. But you mentioned his daughter a couple months ago, and all of a sudden he's like this, and he's kind of waving around, and he's literally like a puddle full of emotions. So that's the second point. You have Rich being the coolest guy ever, and you have Dirk all of a sudden becoming a puddle full of emotions. So the third point I want you to do is I want you to think about the best and the worst moments of your life. Whatever that may be. For me, something that Yana can probably attest to more than I can, the best moment of my life was when we won the biggest championship my senior year, in soccer aspect. I have a crystal clear picture right now of that moment when we scored the winning goal against West Virginia in the Big East Final. They were the number 2 in the country at the time. I think we were like number 20. You know, Big East Final. It's one of the last games before the draw comes out for the Big East, for the NCAA tournament. So it's a huge game on multiple different levels. And played a game, hard-fought game, goes down to 1-1, goes into sudden death overtime. They cleared the ball. I step around the forward. I played out to Georgie. I don't remember if Georgie crossed it or if he passed someone else who crossed it. But we cross and we score. Now I have this picture in my head right now, like it happened 5 minutes ago. I look to the sideline, and for those who know, Mike Mingione's on the sideline, like holding everyone back. Like, did it go in, did it not go in? And as soon as it realized it went in, we start taking off, chasing the guy who scored. And you ask people how we reacted in that moment, and you say we acted like little kids. I was running, skipping, I don't know what I was doing. I was just running as fast as I could. It was probably the fastest I ran all game. Because I was so extremely excited. I mean, that's the high point of where I've ever been at that point in soccer. So when you look at emotional intelligence, a general definition is your ability to identify, assess, and control not only your own emotions, but those of someone else and a group. And it's important to understand what that means and how that can affect certain situations. So for me, the reason why that moment was so great and the reason why I can identify so well as a picture in my head is because it expanded my emotional comfort zone. Up to that point, I'd never been that excited before. I never felt that joy. So in the moment, I didn't know how to react. I started running, jumping, doing whatever that naturally you do. And that's why people say, you know, you acted like a little kid. Because when a little kid first gets a balloon, that's the coolest thing he's ever had. I mean, he's genuinely happy then. First time he runs through a sprinkler. The kid is genuinely happy. He's never been that excited before. So you don't think about how you react, and you just react. And for those, everyone brought up those pictures in their head of, you know, the best or worst moment in their life. There's people you associate with those moments. And those people have a different level of relationship with you. Whether you still talk to them or don't talk to them, when you think about that moment, you think about that person, they're not just any other person. Those kids on the team that day, those kids I haven't talked to probably since that day. So it was the end of the season, you know, end of the Big East season. But when I think about them, they're not just any other person I met in my life. I associate them with those feelings, and then the level of the relationship is higher for that reason. Similar to my friend, unfortunately, ran into a very bad situation with him and his girlfriend at the time. You know, they got mugged by these 2 guys. It was a terrible situation. And that was maybe 5 years ago. 2 weeks ago, we ran into her at this concert. Now, he hasn't talked to her. They broke up maybe 3-4 years, whatever it is. And he tries to act very tough about, I don't want to talk to her, you know, she means nothing, this and that. But when we saw her at the concert, he couldn't help but go over and talk to her. And he didn't want to talk to her. He didn't want to be nice to her. But that relationship between them is different. Forever. Their relationship is different because that extreme emotion that they've never both felt, that was probably the low point of both their lives, changed their relationship. So let's go back. Now we have a general definition for emotional intelligence. Let's go back to Rich. When Rich talks to you, he knows you're talking to him. People are drawn to him. But the reason why Rich is so successful and why people are drawn to Rich, because he exudes that trust. People are more willing to expand their comfort zone emotionally with Rich. They're more willing to open up and tell him about the terrible day they had, but more in depth than saying, I had a bad day. They'll tell him why they had a bad day. They'll tell him why they had a great day. They're pushing that emotional comfort zone with Rich because they trust him, because he exudes that feeling. Now, that's important because that's where relationships grow. On the edges of your comfort zone, or someone else's comfort zone, is where you take the relationship to the next level. Now for Rich, in order to get 16 OV injections, 1,600 Orthovis injections last December, he can't just be any other guy. He's got to be a guy who's pushed the comfort zone of his clients or his friends or his colleagues, whatever you want to call it, so that they trust him enough that they'll do those things for him. So when you see Rich talking to people, notice that they're opening up more to him than they would with you, and sometimes it's the first time they met him. But because he's in the moment and he exudes that trust, people are more willing to push the comfort zone. Now let's look at Dirk. Obviously I said Dirk is usually a very strong guy. But for most people, the birth of their child is one of the high points of their life. And it is for Dirk as well. So at that moment, he doesn't really know how to react. Like he's never felt that joy before, that much excitement in that way. So when you first bring it up, he can't be this guy like this. all of a sudden, just subconsciously, he starts to move around, and he's like this, and oh, she's great, she was laying on my chest the other day, and he can't help it. Now, from a business standpoint, obviously Rich can play his role as far as pushing comfort zones. But if I was to go to Dirk and ask for a raise, I would not want him and his business acumen, already a tough guy commanding attention. I'm gonna walk in a room, he's like, what do you need, guy? I'm gonna turn around and walk out. Like, I'm just gonna know it's like gonna be a no. That's the way it is. But if I walk in and I start talking about his daughter, and all of a sudden he turns all mushy, and he's like, ah, she's great, you're a great Billy, yeah, do whatever you want. I mean, I'd rather him be in that state than in a state of, where he's focused on what's going on. And it's important we identify that by associating people with certain emotions and getting him to the edge of that comfort zone where all of a sudden Dirk's thinking about the best moment of his life or a point where he's not really comfortable, that can affect his decisions, and in a positive way. So as we go through, pushing people's comfort zone is very important. It's where relationships are built, and it's where emotional intelligence comes into play. Your ability to identify, assess, and control people's emotions can get you to the edge of their comfort zones. And that's like a general idea. So for most people, that's an insight into what emotional intelligence is. But to take a step further, there's really 3 models that have come to light now regarding emotional intelligence. So for emotional intelligence, dates back all the way back to Charles Darwin. For survival of the fittest, how animals adapt in their environment, that's loosely associated with emotional intelligence. But very recently, people have started to link